If you're a founder looking to bootstrap your startup and build a software product, then this video is for you. Over time, it has become harder to secure VC funding. It may be due to the economic situation around, or it could be to the fact that there are more startups chasing fewer VCs. But I think one of the main reasons is VCs themselves are reluctant to fund just startup ideas. They want to see some kind of traction, so which makes it easier for them to fund startups that are at a later stage than the ones that are just starting out, early stage startups. So as a startup founder, this gives you another viable option with the difficulty of securing funding, and that option is bootstrapping your startup, bootstrapping your idea, bootstrapping your software product. But there are peculiar things with bootstrapping. Bootstrapping gives you more control over your startup and your journey. But then if you're bootstrapping, it typically means you have limited resources. And then don't forget that the costs of building a software product are quite significant. So that creates a constraint for bootstrapping, and that usually discourages founders from going down this route. But I think bootstrapping your MVP is a viable option. And one of the first questions you need to ask yourself and answer is, why are you building the MVP? Are you building the MVP so that you get funding? Are you building the MVP so that you show traction? Or are you building the MVP so you can achieve some kind of profitability in your startup? Now, if your answer is you want to achieve some kind of profitability, then a lot of the tips I'm going to give are going to be very useful for you, for the founder that's trying to build an MVP, that's trying to bootstrap their startup in order to achieve some kind of profitability. Because as a founder that's bootstrapping, $10,000, £10,000 is much more valuable to you than $100 million or £100 million to a VC. So you have to be very, careful with how you allocate resources. Now, if you're building your MVP because you want to achieve profitability, there are a few things you need to consider in making sure that you make the most of the resources that you're putting into building your MVP, that you're putting into building your software product. And I'll go through some of these things and talk about them. Now, the first thing you need to do if you're looking to build an MVP and you're bootstrapping your MVP is you need to articulate your idea. Get your idea out of your head and clearly written down. Right? You can write a paragraph or two that explains the vision, the concept, the idea, the solution you're trying to build, and the problem you're trying to solve. You need to get it out of your head. So first thing is you need to articulate it, write it down. Next thing you need to do is, after writing down just a paragraph that describes what your idea, your solution, and your MVP is all about, you need to extract what the requirements of that solution are, right? And you're going to be doing this over and over until you refine it to a point whereby you have the minimum set of features that go into your minimum viable product. Don't think about how your product will look like in the next 5, 6 or 3 years from now. Don't be fooled by the current apps you see around or you use. These apps have taken years to evolve. If you compare them to how they started out, right, it's not an apple to apple comparison. So you need to think about your product as, what's the minimum set of features that I can build into the app right now, or into my software right now, that moves the needle, that gets me to start getting feedback from users, right? So after writing down the concept, extract what those features would be and keep on going through and remove features until you have the barest minimum that can go into the app to make it functional for you to be able to start getting that feedback. So an example is, instead of saying, okay, I need my app to allow people to log in or log in with social platforms, you should be a bit more specific than that, because when you meet the developers eventually and tell them you want to have login, what kind of login do you want? You want social login. What kind of social login? Right? There's login with Facebook, there's login with Apple, there's login with Google, and a bunch of other social media platforms. So you want to be as specific as problem. My app is going to allow users to log in with email. You're going to allow them log in with Google. You're going to allow them log in with Facebook. Right? So you need to write all of that down and refine it. And for the sake of your MVP, you don't even need all these login options. Just log in with email is very good for you to build into your first version. Right? So articulate your idea, write it down in a few paragraphs, extract what the requirements are, refine it until you get the barest minimum of requirements. Then the next thing you need to do after articulating your idea and doing everything I've just said is you need to make that visual as much as possible. Now, this is where you may need the help of a designer to take those set of requirements, the minimum requirements written down, and they create, the user interface and kind of come up with a flow. But if you're bootstrapping and you have very tight resources, you can even do these sketches yourself. Right now, I am in the process of building out a product, an idea. I'm trying to see if it's going to catch on. And I've written down those requirements and I drew the sketches myself, right? So it's something you can do. I'll put a picture of the sketch on the screen. So it's something you can do yourself. You don't have to be an expert, even though if you have years of experience, it helps. But you use apps every day. Take one of them and say, okay, I want my login screen to look like this. Draw a rectangle that looks like a screen. And say this is where the box for login would be. Make it specific as possible. If you have these sketches, so you log in and then you see the home screen and then you see your profile and then you can do this and so on, link them up. Then you can now get a UI, UX engineer, a designer, to take those sketches and do some high quality designs. Any designer you present these sketches to is going to appreciate it. And I believe it's going to even cost you less if you show them that these are the sketches I want, only for them to transform it into, high fidelity designs. In some cases, you could even bypass the need for a UI UX designer and just take these sketches straight up to the developers, which brings us to the next thing you need to do if you're bootstrapping your MVP. You need to get a development team, right? Because most likely you don't have the skills to write the code. And even if you do, you may not have the time to sit down and build out the whole app. Now, what you want to do, or the reason why you have those first two steps is you absolutely want to have your requirements documented and have some kind of visual representation of your idea before you make contact with developers. Getting a development team is going to be what's going to cost you the most of all these things you need to do if you're bootstrapping your idea. So you need to be able to minimize the risk of them not understanding exactly what you want to do, or giving them vague instructions. You're going to go round and round, and it's going to cost you a lot. And you may end up building the wrong product. But if you're very specific, you have the designs, whether it's your hand drawn designs or it's done by the UI UX designer, it makes it easier for the team to pick it up. Now, try and get a team as much as possible, a development team. Look for the one that fits your budget. Do not be too cheap, because if you're too cheap, you're going to struggle to build that product and you may end up just scrapping everything and everything becomes a sunk cost to you. Right? So try and get a competent team. Maybe I'll do a video on how you can identify a competent team. But if you're building an app, you probably want to also avoid, using freelancers. A team is always better, but obviously getting a team will cost you more. So you have to find a way of striking a very good balance. The problem with using a single freelancer is they would build the app and you see it working and you pay them because that's all they want. They want to get paid. But over time, you find out that they wrote the code in such a way that it's very hard to maintain. So you want to avoid that as much as possible, right? And that's why sometimes it's good to get, an expert or someone to advise you on how to identify the best freelancers or the best development team to get your work done. I have a service called Intellectual Teams where you can hire high quality developers at very competitive rates. I'll leave a link in the video, in the description of the video. But you don't have to use my service. You can just go anywhere online, search for these developers, but lean towards getting a team that fits your budget. If you can't get a team, then get a freelancer and make sure that with all these things you've documented, you've narrowed down all the details, nothing is vague, and ask them to build your app for you. They would appreciate you for that. Another thing you want to do is, once you have this team and you've engaged the team, one way to make sure that you're making the most of your investment and your resources is to constantly check in. Check in with the development process. Don't leave long periods of time before you find out whether they're making progress or not, or see how much they've done. I would advise, as much as your schedule permits, check in daily with the development team. Make that very clear to them before you even hire them, that you're going to require daily check-ins. Very simple things. What did they build, the previous time, from the previous time last time you guys met? What do they plan to build before your next daily check-in? And most importantly, what are the issues they are facing right now that they need to bring up to you so that you guys can find a way of resolving them while the issues are still small and can be dealt with? If you don't have the schedule or they feel it's too tight, maybe check in every 2 days or every 3 days. But I'll advise, regular check-ins as much as possible. Not just checking in, but you also need to schedule regular demos of their progress. Weekly demos, I would suggest. Or if weekly doesn't really fit what you're doing, you can do it every 2 weeks. But try not to exceed that time period. So that with every demo, they show you what they've been able to build. You can check what has been built, what has been produced against your requirements, against your designs, and say, yes, we're making good progress. Or no, we're missing the mark here. We need to make an adjustment. So these daily check-ins, weekly demos, or demos every fortnight helps everyone to stay on track. And the moment things start veering off course, you get a very clear sign of it, and you don't hear about it after 3 months, after a whole month, or after 6 weeks. And it's almost like going to be hard to correct, the direction in which you are moving. So regular check-ins is something you need to do. Another thing you need to take into consideration is when you're engaging this team or this freelancer, make it very clear that they must, give you the code at the end of the day. If you're paying them based on milestones, which is another good thing you should do, with every milestone you pay, they hand over the code that produced that particular milestone. And you keep on doing that until you get to the end of your journey or the end of the product development for the MVP. At the same time, you need to make it very clear that the IP belongs to you and not to them. So have some kind of agreement that's clearly spelled out, that covers all these things. Because you have limited resources and you're trying to bootstrap your product. So you can't behave like a VC-backed startup where you have all the funds, you can bring in so many experts, and you can just say, okay, let's build and see how it goes. No, define what you want, make it very clear, get the development team to build it, constantly check as they're building, and get that first version of your MVP out. Once you have that version out, it's going to meet the initial requirements you documented, the simple set of detailed requirements. Then you need to make sure you release the app and start getting feedback. Hopefully you documented and built the right set of features. Therefore, when you release it and users start using it, you're going to start getting quality feedback. And you start to see that, okay, I need to adjust this feature. I need to add these features. Users are asking for more of this. This part of the app is broken. And then you adjust and correct course. Now, with every set of changes you introduce into your MVP, you follow the same step. Articulate it, write it down, be very detailed, do the visual representation, whether it's sketches or you're getting a designer to do it, hand it over to the development team, check in with them regularly, do your regular demos, make sure it's tested, and then you release another version. When you do this, I feel that gives you the best return on your investment, right? Because you're bootstrapping and you have limited resources. I have never run a VC-backed startup. All the app development, all the products I have built have been bootstrapped. So I have a very good understanding of how this works and how to make sure you get the best return on your investment. Now, if you want more of this, I have a recorded mini course that talks about how you can take your idea and turn it into a software product. Right? It goes into a bit more details and it's only 40 minutes long. So you can watch it and get a bit more details into how you can turn your idea into a software product. If you need advice on building your own product, you can always reach out to me. I have a tech advisory service for founders just like you to help you, answer your questions or give you more details. You can also book a free 30-minute session where I can answer any questions you have. And that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you found it useful, especially for those of you who are looking to bootstrap the MVP and you're building that MVP because you want to achieve some kind of profit somewhere down the line. These steps I talked about are like the barest minimum you can do. And if you do that, I believe you're going to get the best return on your investment. If you're still watching and you don't know much about me, my name is Bulama Yusuf. I'm the founder of Intellectual Apps and bulama.io. At Intellectual Apps, we build mobile apps for startups, while at bulama.io, I offer tech leadership services to founders and startups. If you're new here and you're not subscribed, please subscribe. If you like this video, please like it. If you have any questions or comment to add it in the comment section. And if you know any founder that is bootstrapping that will find this useful, please share that as well. Thank you.